Walt Disney had a vision for bringing animation into a new perspective through artistic choices and a magical perception of the imagination. However, although this brought a positive impact to artistry within animation, it still enforced all societal values in thinking on the screen. For instance, encouraging dangerous behaviors and plot lines that are meant to be viewed as flirting, although it's essentially promoting rape culture. Now, divulging onto the topic, one of Disney's classic princess films, Sleeping Beauty, takes the perspective of rape culture into play, especially since the original folktale centers part of its plot in the princess being raped by a king who finds her asleep and later wakes up from her curse as one of the twins she has birthed sucks on her nipple, extracting the venom brought from the splinter that set upon her deep sleep curse. Now, it is interesting because Disney decided to take this story, and although they obviously didn't include the rape part within their film, as it would be quite triggering for its audience, it still projects a sense of rape culture into play. We have the tale of a princess who is cursed on her 16th birthday to be put into deep sleep and never wake up unless she has her true love's kiss. However, essentially we have Prince Philip kissing Aurora in her deep sleep, and although it can be argued that the kiss is required to wake her up, it can also be argued that Aurora didn't consent even before she went into deep sleep, so Prince Philip could kiss her unconscious. It is especially disgusting in the sense that Sleeping Beauty comes from a tale of rape and draws it out in a less obvious context, but still brings into perspective rapist behavior such as not considering consent into any situation and taking advantage while the person they are attacking is unconscious. Therefore, there is a dilemma that Disney sets forth, the idea that Aurora requires a true love's kiss to wake up to excuse the rapist behavior from Prince Philip's part. And it doesn't help that since the tale was written with a rape scene, it doesn't necessarily place the film's story into a better image. Patricia Paulson observes in his study for his thesis, Rape Culture in Disney's Animated Princess Movies, the certain behaviors presented towards Disney princess. By divulging further into 13 Disney princess films and classifying what characteristics of rape culture are brought out in the movie. As for Sleeping Beauty, male privilege, direct power, women seen as objects, violence towards one, isolation, intimidation, and coercion, and threats are all found in the film. More importantly, all 13 of the movies observed scored 100% seeing women as objects, which presents the frightening reality of how it's culturally acceptable to present women not as individuals or human beings, but rather objects that can be toyed with, manipulated, and utilized for, especially, the male's benefit. Now, moving ahead, the film Maleficent can be critically viewed as a rape and revenge film, which captures Maleficent's origin villain story. Nonetheless, first, it's important to note that although this Disney's intention to write Maleficent as a villain, as portrayed in Sleeping Beauty, her tale reveals another side about her. As Sarah A. Clunies explains in her article, Maleficent, Rape, Brat, and the Feminine Divine, Maleficent's trauma is villainized, and this is something often seen in popular culture, taking women's trauma and accounting it for a villain origin story, as they seek for revenge. However, women who undergo such trauma are simply survivors of abuse, sexual assault, rape, etc. Women should not be antagonized for their trauma, when they are simply trying to find justice within a society that often ignores and sympathizes with its aggressors. As explained by Clunies, in his quest to marry the princess of the human kingdom and therefore occupy the throne, the protagonist Stefan seduces the benevolent fairy Maleficent and drugs her and then cuts off her glorious wings while she sleeps. When she wakes up, she finds out what he has done. She is at first consumed with mourning and then transformed from a trusting and powerful force of good to a wrathful, vengeful, and incredibly traumatized force of evil. Maleficent's assault presents itself as an allegory for rape within a children's film, which demonstrates to its audience a much real experience that many survivors of rape have while projecting it into a fantasy-driven film. Although the film works in delivering a much real situation, it also favors into rape culture ideology, being that women can become villains due to their trauma when they are simply survivors of it and trying to find justice for themselves. Maleficent, in a sense, is having a much common reaction known as trauma response that many survivors go through, and thus her reaction is much of anger, and it is important to note that responses can vary. Furthermore, as for her attacker Stefan, as discussed by Amy Capizzi and Rachel Wyatt in their article, The Rape Culture and Violence Legitimization Model Application to Disney's Maleficent, they consider how Stefan believed he had to commit this act in order to become king. Becoming king was worth the violence towards his friend in order to get what he wanted, power. In other words, the rapist Stefan felt he had a sense of ownership and reason for his actions, which was to essentially gain power. Now, as Capizzi and Wyatt explained, in the patriarchal structure showcased throughout the movie, in the human realm, the leader is a king. The men are soldiers who protect the city from evil. Women marry, have children, and raise those children. Women must be protected and remain pure before marriage. This is the culture Stefan is raised and impacts his view of womanhood. Now, this isn't to justify Stefan's rape towards Maleficent, but for the audience to understand that the society structured within Stefan being one seeing women ultimately as objects and not individuals. They are to serve and remain pure for men to breed with. Although Maleficent and Sleeping Beauty are only two examples of films that characterize rape culture within their plot, many of Disney films are subjected to much such mindset and tend to bring rape behaviors as acceptable. This is dangerous since it is cultivating a society where rape culture is normal and simply flirting when truly it is not. It is important for Disney to take into account its audiences, what they are being presented with in the screen, as not only does it give aggressors a pass to their behavior, but also promotes such behaviors to continue.